Well, let's now speak to Calvin Dark, U.S. political strategist, RC Communications in Washington, D.C., about how these latest deportations fit into President Trump's thinking with regards to immigration. Calvin, thanks so much for your time on this. Why do you think the governments of eSwatini and South Sudan would agree to receive these deportees, some of whom are convicted criminals? What's in it for them?
Well, thank you for having me. I think that's a good question, and it's not clear on their end or on the American end exactly what Donald Trump is promising. But let's step back for a moment and think about why Donald Trump is even doing this. We remember that during the campaign, Donald Trump campaigned hard on fixing America's immigration system that is broken. Now, he incorrectly said that the problems of crime and economic problems here in the United States are because of immigrants, when we know by statistics that the immigrant communities commit crimes at a much lower rate than Americans. And so what happened is when Donald Trump came into office in January and he started his deportations, he realized that there aren't millions of these horrible criminal illegal aliens, that most undocumented immigrants are hardworking. And so since he doesn't have the numbers, he focuses on the drama. That's why he's having press conferences about 5 immigrants that he had to send on a government plane. I don't think he would put hardened criminals on a Delta flight to Africa. So he's focusing on this because he doesn't have the numbers. He needs the drama. And I think the other question is, well, why this? Why Africa? We have to remember that Donald Trump has yes.
Because I was going to ask you, Calvin, there's a section of the U.S. population that do have concerns about illegal migration. Wouldn't they be cheering this move? And what's been the reaction generally across the U.S. as this is happening?
The reaction hasn't been positive because, yes, there are a lot of people from both parties that really want our immigration system to be fixed. But what they don't like is that these immigrants are being treated like hardened criminals when the reality is that most of them aren't. And they also don't like the way that Donald Trump is doing this. Let's remember, the cruelty is the point. You may have heard over the last couple of weeks, he created Alligator Alcatraz, makeshift prison down in Florida, where there's a moat with alligators surrounding it. No, it sounds crazy, but that's what the Trump administration is doing. Why? Because he wants to make it so any immigrant in the country will self-deport, or any immigrant thinking about coming to this country will think twice because of those drastic measures. Now, then the question becomes, well, then why Africa? These immigrants weren't from Africa. Because, first of all, there are 2 reasons. One, racism. Let's be honest. If you're trying to create a nightmare for immigrants, what's more nightmarish to Donald Trump than sending someone to Africa, to a country he's probably never heard of? Secondly, why do you think he put these tariffs on these small African countries that don't really have significant trade with the U.S.?
Yes, I'm trying to understand the racism. I mean, discrimination on account of race. I don't quite get that. What does that mean?
What that means is if Donald Trump is trying to have such drastic measures to basically intimidate and scare people, in his mind, he's thinking, what's scarier than sending immigrants with no connection to Africa to a country they probably never heard of? That's why he's doing it. He's doing it because he wants to create this nightmare. He wants a press conference where he's saying, I'm sending the hardened criminals to this country in Africa that you probably never heard of. It matches the rhetoric that he talks about Africa all the time. And also, through the tariffs and through other trade policies, why was eSwatini even included in the list of his Liberation Day tariffs in the first place? Because when Donald Trump needs pressure against these countries, he knows he can do it through tariffs. So that's probably part of the incentives he gave for these countries to accept these immigrants.
Okay. Thank you so much for your time. And of course, we've had some comments from U.S. government officials who say that a lot of this has no correlation with the tariffs. That's what we've seen in terms of some of the statements. But that was Calvin Dark there, who's a U.S. political strategist joining us on the program.